Good day once again, and here's another session on advanced research methods. For this particular session, we will focus on um, methodology. Okay? So let's begin with a definition. So technically, the term methodology pertains to the overall approaches and perspectives to research process and is concerned with the following. Number one, why you collected certain data. So it is important to note that part of the methodology requirements of a research undertaking would require the answer to the question why you collected certain data. So it will uh, necessitate the formulation of your research purpose or your research aim in order to thoroughly uh, answer the question why you collected data. By the way, methodology in its basic for its basic definition or meaning refers to the study of the research methods. So in addition to the first question, you will also have part of the methodology concerns what data you collected. Okay, so you will need to identify the type of data that you have collected. Okay, so it will be uh, quantitative or qualitative or combination of qualitative and quantitative data for that matter. And then where you collected it. So it is also important to note uh, the source of the data, whether it's primarily sourced or secondarily sourced, okay? Because we need to ensure a certain degree of reliability as well as the as in order to ensure that the results of the study will be more or less accurate or precise. And then how you collected data. So it will refer to the procedure that supported the researchers to collecting the data. Okay, so that is also an equally important matter of an equally important matter in so far as methodology is concerned. And finally, how you analyze it. Okay, so it will also bring you to a realization on what type of analysis was employed or what type of analysis were employed, okay, insofar as the study is concerned. So overall, methodology is concerned with why you collected certain data, what data you collected, where you collected, and how you collected and analyzed the said data. Okay? Methodology as a requirement in the research process is subsumed in the research designing process. So research design refers to the overall plan, overall systematic plan, no, uh, that you develop in order to guide you, okay, in studying a scientific problem. Okay, so it is your plan, okay, in order to answer, okay, help you answer your research problem. So it's the strategy that will enable the researcher, okay, to integrate the different components of the study in an inherent, okay, and logical way. Okay, sorry, this is not inherent, in a coherent and logical way. So thereby ensuring that the research problem will be effectively addressed. Okay, so that's research design. On that note, it is to be understood further that research design should identify the research problem clearly and justify its selection at the very first instance. So that's what you do in order for you to be able to come up properly with an appropriately chosen research design. So you begin with identifying the research problem, okay, and then clearly justify and provide clear justification for its selection. And then the next thing that you're going to do is to engage yourself in an exhaustive search for materials, both data and non-data materials, in an activity in the activity in research called review of related literature. So you will review previously published literature associated with the problem area. Okay, so that's why the first two activities that you were asked to that you were asked to perform, okay, has to do with fulfilling the requirements of number one, identifying the topic for basis of the research problem that you will develop for your dissertation proposal, and number two is the annotated bibliography, which actually is all about reviewing literature that will back you up in the in your proposal. After that, you will need to clearly and explicitly specify research questions, okay, that are central to the problem selected. Okay, so from the problem, you will now translate this into researchable units, which we now term as research questions. So as it is referring to a question, then the framing of research question, okay, is usually in the interrogative form. So we have it in the what or how, okay, type of questions. Further, uh, the researcher will need to effectively describe the data which will be necessary to answer the research questions and explain how such data will be obtained. So this is where now the discussion and the decision whether to consider quantitative or qualitative or combination of quantitative and qualitative data will be observed in the study. So that will be for the next step in the process of designing. And then we have described the methods of analysis which will be applied to the data relative to the research questions. Okay, so here you will need to pre-identify, okay, how you will do it for analysis. So will it be in the form of univariate analysis, uh, bivariate, or multivariate analysis? Okay, and this will be in consonance with the research questions that you have framed, following the identification of the research problem supported by the research gap and your research aim and purpose. Okay, so that's for research designing. Therefore, summing it up for research design, okay, it will number one, discuss the entire methodology requirement. Okay, number two, to be more specific, it will also account for what technique you will have to use, what strategies you will have to employ. Number three, part of the technique will be dealing with um, how you will be gathering your data. Will it be uh, in the form of eliciting uh, answers or data or information from groups of individuals? That's why you will need to discuss your sampling procedure, population, and or subject of the study. And then comes instrumentation. Instrumentation is the overall concern, okay, that would relate to number one, identification of what data gathering tool or tools you will have to utilize to in order to enable the researcher to gather the data that will be needed in providing um, accurate and precise answers to your questions. So alongside with the identification of the research uh, the data gathering instrument, okay, or the data gathering tool, you will need to also explain, okay, what in more specific uh, type the instrument you will be using or utilizing. Are you going to formulate the instrument yourself, or are you going to adapt? Okay, so adapt with an ADOPT or ADAPT, because when you adapt, so you will need not go you will not go through the rigors of establishing the validity and reliability of the instrument, okay, because it is already understood that a universally acceptable instrument is valid and reliable. Okay, however, if even in the slightest, okay, even in the slightest revision you will observe, based on an existing instrument, there is still a need to do the test of validity and reliability of the intended um, data gathering instrument, right? So part of the instrumentation will also deal with the discussion of the extent of validity and reliability of your instrument should you be testing the validity and reliability of your instrument. Okay, and then the structure of the instrument. Okay, so all this form part of instrumentation, and then we have how the data will be analyzed and interpreted. Okay, so it is all about your plan on what type of analysis and the level of interpretation you will have to observe in your study. Thus, the contents of the third chapter, uh, which is entitled Research Design. Okay, so the third chapter of the UL Prescribed Report has for its title research design. And these are the subtopics in the third chapter. So the subtopics, however, will vary depending on what the method you will have to use. So, but generally, these are the requirements. Number one, we have research method. Two, locale of the study. Three, we have respondents or subjects of the study, as the case may be. Or in more generic terms, we term it as participants of the study. Data gathering instrument, we have data gathering procedure, and then we have treatment of data, right? If it is purely qualitative, it is termed as data management, okay? So data management replaces the side head title treatment of data in purely qualitative research. So let me have a cursory review because you have, I suppose, okay, have had gone through the process of have gone through the process of doing research design relative to your thesis. So let me begin with research method. So what is research method? Now, research method refers to the various specific tools or ways data can be collected and analyzed. Okay, so be always be reminded of the fact that research method, okay, is referring to the specific tools or ways data can be collected and analyzed. Okay, so that's number one. Now, as to types of research methods, we have covered this lengthily in the series of oral presentations in order for you to be able to know what the different dimensions and classifications of research are. But allow me to capture, okay, some of what we had for discussion in the previous sessions on the types of research methods. The most popular, okay, among UL graduate students is to categorize research on the basis of time element. On the basis of time element, we have three. We have historical, we have descriptive, and we have experimental. How do we distinguish one from the other? Historical basically answers the question what happened in the past. No? As the term, as the root word history would suggest, it would be dealing with those that the happenings or the events or the phenomenon or phenomena that took place, um, in the okay, that took place uh, in the earlier on an earlier time period. Okay, so that is historical. The second type of research, according to time element, is termed as descriptive. It is dealing with the contemporary events. It is concerned with the present day situation. That's why, according to Best and Best in 1990, okay, descriptive research can be simply defined as that which will answer the question, what is? Okay, so what is happening at the present? Okay, so that is descriptive. And then finally, if historical would be all up to answering the question what was, descriptive for what is, experimental then will be futuristic. It will be answering the question what will be, right? So that will be for the different types of research methods. Okay, so we have historical, we have descriptive, and then we have experimental. Under descriptive, we have several subtypes. Under experimental, we have two types. Okay, we have number one, we have the true experimental design, where two principles are observed. Number one, principle of randomization, okay, which is very significant in ensuring, okay, that that the the experimental design will be uh, assuming, okay, the true type of experimental design. Okay, and then we have uh, okay, so that's the main, okay, consideration in so far as uh, true experimental design is concerned, the observation of randomization. Okay, and then number two, we have the pseudo or the quasi. Okay, um, these uh, are uh, are experimental types, okay, that are neither true nor weak experimental design. Okay, meaning that this appears to be like experimental design, but are actually, okay, not experimental design, so to speak. Okay, and what do we have for examples under the pseudo or the quasi? So we have the counterbalance method, we have the time series. Okay, now as opposed to true experimental design, we also have the weak experimental design, because there is no randomization, and here we have the so-called pre-experimental design. Okay, so that will be for the experimental design. Now, for the descriptive, so let me identify for you each. We begin with case analysis. Okay, case analysis is an in-depth study of something. It may be in the form of a program, an individual as observed in a medical setting, for example, a patient. Okay, it can also be in terms of system. It can also be in terms of organization. Okay, so the main concern in a case study is to look into uh, what uh, uh, what uh, uh, what something wrong happened in so far as the program or the system is concerned. Okay, so it will be delving on the reason for uh, the failure of a particular subject, okay, uh, or focus of investigation. Okay, so it will look into what went wrong, okay, in a particular subject, or in a particular subject in a particular interest of study, subject under study. Okay, so the main intention in the conduct of a case analysis is to arrive at alternative courses of action, or ACA. Okay, so the ACAs are actually meant to provide an antidote. Okay, uh, should similar exist in the future. Okay, so uh, that is case analysis. And case analysis can be performed in two ways. It can be a single case analysis. It can be a multiple case analysis. And usually, case analysis is qualitatively done. Okay, so that's qualitative analysis. Number two, we have survey. I think it's one of the more popular research methods. Okay, we have survey. Survey is when we are interested in looking into the behavior, looking into the opinions, okay, in looking into the perceptions of individuals, okay, and the survey usually is concerned with the collective, okay, responses of a representative group. Okay, so survey takes the form of descriptive survey or descriptive normative survey. So we have the following subtypes under survey. So we have number one, descriptive survey per se. Okay, so what is meant by descriptive survey? Okay, the distinguishing factor lies on what data gathering instrument is used. Always remember this. Survey would be requiring survey questionnaire, okay, for primary data gathering tool. I said for primary because you can have it back up by uh, interview guide, okay. So in order to elicit secondary data that will reinforce the primary data gathered via the primary data gathering tool, which is the data gathering instrument called survey questionnaire, right? So the uh, the first type of survey would be using researcher formulated questionnaire. Okay, so descriptive survey uses researcher formulated, while descriptive normative survey, okay, uses standardized questionnaire. That's why the term normative. Okay, norm is also is synonymous to the term standards. Okay, so what is meant by standardized questionnaire? A standardized questionnaire is a universally accepted instrument that is assumed of its validity and reliability. That's why if you will have to adopt ADOPT, okay, a questionnaire that is standardized, then you will no longer have to establish the validity and the reliability of the instrument that you will use. However, you will need to also look into ethical considerations in the use of um, in the use of uh, standardized questionnaire. So you will need to ask permission for its use, from its rightful owners, because usually uh, this sort of documents are guaranteed or protected by what we call as intellectual property rights. All right. So that's the two types of survey um, for research methods. We have descriptive survey and descriptive normative survey. And then we have developmental. Developmental study is a type of study that is done over a longer period of time. As the term development suggests, the very intention of a developmental study is to track the development or what changes have occurred over time. Okay, so that's developmental. So a developmental study can be pursued in two ways. Number one, it can be in the form of longitudinal or cross-sectional. Okay, so we have the longitudinal developmental study, or we have the developmental. We have the cross-sectional developmental study. So what is the difference? The line that separates one from the other is the nature or type of the participants. Okay, so in a longitudinal developmental study, okay, participants are homogeneous. Okay, so when we say homogeneous, they're categorized as one group. So there are no other subgroupings observed. Okay, such that if you, for example, would be looking into the uh, the development of the students in terms of academic performance in their in high school, like uh, from grade 7 up to grade 12, then you will not, okay, categorize the students further as having to distinguish the boys from the girls. Okay, so uh, a longitudinal developmental study would regard the participants uh, plainly as students. All right. So that is for longitudinal. However, if the study would be concerned further in determining who is better over the other, okay, insofar as academic performance in the how many years? Uh, 4 plus 2 in the 6 year program of study, then it will be the cross-sectional type of developmental study. Okay, so that is developmental study. And then we have follow-up. Now, follow-up, as the term suggests, no, is a follow-through. It is a type of study that is considered as the offshoot of a pre-existing or an earlier completed study. So the intention is to look into whether there are changes uh, from the time the study was completed and now. All right, so that is a follow-up study. Okay. And then we have assessment or evaluative. Okay, so these two terms are used interchangeably. However, it is to be noted that technically assessment can be differentiated from evaluative study, okay, insofar as the type and nature of instrument is used. Okay, in an assessment study, usually uh, the uh, the instrument is researcher formulated because there are no existing instrument that would best fit, okay, uh, the type of questions in an assessment study, right? So the researcher would have to refer to different materials and then come up with an instrument that are customized, okay, or that is customized rather, okay, to the requirements of the present study. Meanwhile, an evaluative study is where the intention, just like an assessment study, is to appraise, okay, the present situation of something. Can be a program or an organization, okay, um, but the data gathering tool, okay, is takes the form of an evaluation tool, okay, of a tool that has been uh, is considered valid and reliable. For example, uh, performance evaluation. Okay, so if you are guided by specific indicators, okay, of an instrument that is highly reliable and highly valid, then that is evaluative study, right? So that will be for assessment and evaluative study type of descriptive research. Then we have correlation and association. So I have mentioned this several times. The intention of a correlation or association study is to establish the relationship that exists between two or more variables. Okay, so that's correlation or association. And then we have comparative. So comparative is a type of study that is concerned with establishing the significance of difference. Okay, so where at least two groups are compared. Okay, so that is comparative. A more specific type of comparative study is ex post facto. Okay, ex post facto is a Latin phrase which means from after the fact. Okay, so it is a study that is conducted, okay, after the phenomenon has occurred or the event has taken place. Um, an example would be the effect of long time cigarette smoking, okay, in a person. So for ethical reasons, you don't subject, okay, individuals to smoking sessions on a long time basis just to check what will be the changes that will occur from then and now. Okay, so what you will do instead is to in an ex post factor research would compare, okay, uh, the lungs, for example, of the lungs of the non-smoker and those who are self-professed smokers. Okay, and then compare. Okay, so that's ex post facto. And then we have trend and projection study. So trend and projection study is a type of study that is on the basis of establishing assumptions, like in a feasibility study. Okay, so a feasibility study is a study that is conducted to determine the likelihood of success of any undertaking. It can be in the form of a project or a business venture. Okay, so that's where you will have to establish your assumptions and then have these assumptions, okay, for basis of projections. Okay, and then we have documentary analysis. So the documentary analysis is a type of descriptive research where the primary basis for data, okay, are documents. Okay, for example, financial analysis. Okay, so where the basis for financial operation of an organization or say micro enterprise will be the balance sheet, will be the income statement, and so on and so forth. Okay. And then we have the participatory research. So participatory research is a large scale research study that will be requiring the participation of different researchers because of the depth of the study. So when you do, for example, a national survey of this and that, okay, where you will be needing the help of collaborators from different regions in order to facilitate the conduct of the said study. Okay, so that's descriptive research method and its typologies. We have case analysis, we have survey, we have developmental study, we have follow-up study, assessment evaluative studies, we have correlation or association comparative analysis, we have ex post facto, trend and projection studies, documentary analysis, and participatory research. Another way to look at research methods, no, can be on the basis of what data you use. So it can be in the form of qualitative and quantitative, where in a qualitative study, you can have it in terms of narrative inquiry, ethnographic research, we have phenomenology, and of course uh, we have grounded theory, grounded theory. Okay, and quantitative, as discussed in the previous session, maybe uh, in the form of correlation, experimental study, and so on and so forth. And then we have the mixed methods. Okay, so we have the four types of mixed methods. We have the embedded, we have the triangulation method, we have the concurrent, and we have the sequential. Okay, and under sequential, we have two types. We have the uh, sequential explanatory and we have the sequential exploratory, right? So these are uh, the different types of research methods. Now, in addition to research method, you will also have part of the research design, the discussion of the locus of your study. So when you say locus, it is uh, the place of the conduct of the study. So here you will need to justify the choice with reference to the research problem. Like for example, in an academic performance study, why the choice is on this particular division, for example. So you will need to explain, uh, provide a valid justification. You don't say because I'm working in that particular division. You will need to provide a valid justification. And what do I mean by valid justification? Remember, the very essence of research is to answer an existing problem. So you will need to properly assess the problem, okay, in terms of number one, urgency, number two, relevancy. All right. So these are the two basic parameters, okay, for basis of qualifying whether the choice of the location is justified or not. Now, part of the uh, discussion on the locale of the study in the third chapter of the UL Prescribed report, okay, is the uh, is the sitemap. Okay, sitemap is the cartograph. It's an illustration that will depict, where you can locate, okay, the locus of the study. Okay, so that's for the locale. So next to locale, we have the participants of the study. So do not be confused, with the use of the different terms associated with participants of the study. The term respondents is exclusively for surveys. So respondents, because the participants are the ones directly responding to the questions. That's why they are referred to as respondents. Now, if the participants do not necessarily provide questions to answers being asked by the researcher or the research team, then they are not considered respondents. They are key informants or simply participants. If they, for example, in an academic performance study, the only basis, for example, in establishing the performances of the students is uh, are the grades of the students. So you don't ask them questions. That's why they do not give you direct answers. Okay, so they are not respondents in that sense. Okay, so subjects may refer to an organization, okay, or to individuals or group of individuals covered in the study. Right. So that's respondents, subjects of the study for participants. Okay. So in a survey study, you will need to discuss your population. So either the population is finite or infinite, because if it is a finite population, meaning that the number is uh, is easily determined, then you can already proceed with the task of determining the required sample size. So you may have for basis of determining the sample the use of certain formula. But here's a word of caution. Many uh, many commit the mistake of having to use for basis of determining the sample size um, the Slovene formula. You see, uh, Slovene formula is the most widely used and abused, okay, formula in determining the sample size. It's better to use other formula, or better, maybe we can also have a try in using in using uh, applications, okay,
Power
are for
analysis.
free, okay, in the net, like for example G Power. So if you're interested, you check that out. You can use that for free, and it's easy to use. Okay, so it's G Power, right? We have part of us of the discussion of the sampling procedure, which I already have mentioned in the earlier part of my discussion, dealing with the determination of the sample size and the sampling technique, where sampling technique can take the form of probability and non-probability sampling techniques. So where probability observes two principles, principles of randomization, and number two, principle of equiprobability. And these two principles are absent in the non-probability. What are examples under probability? So, probability sampling technique types are: number one, we have the most prominent fishbowl technique. Okay, fishbowl or the lottery method. Okay, then we have systematic sampling with the random start. We have stratified random sampling. Okay, and others. Okay, so we have that. We have probability sampling technique. Okay. Then we have non-probability. So non-probability can take the form of accidental sampling, or in some works, okay, the mention of incidental naman, okay, incidental sampling, right? So we have accidental or incidental. Then we have purposive sampling. We have coda sampling, okay, and others. Okay, so that's for the types of sampling techniques. Moreover, okay, for studies involving assessment or similar studies, you term your participants of the study as subjects. So you will need to discuss sources of data, determine who the best person is or the key informant, okay, and then identify ways to source the data. Okay. So that will be for the participants. And then now comes the data gathering instrument. So for data gathering instrument, okay, you will need to discuss whether what instrument you have used or data gathering tool. So obviously for by nature of a survey study, you will need to administer questionnaire. Thus, you will be needing a questionnaire for data gathering instrument, interview guide, or schedule when you will need to conduct an interview or focus discussion. Okay, so then we have documents for documentary analysis and observation. Okay, dealing with quantitative and qualitative data. So data gathering instrument or instrumentation will include, in addition to the discussion of the tool, number one, uh, we have the how you were able to formulate, okay, the instrument, how valid and reliable the instrument is. Okay, so therefore you will need to uh, explain everything in line with the data gathering instrument under instrumentation. Then we have now data gathering procedure. So the data gathering procedure uh, will be dealing with uh, discussions on the steps in gathering the data, okay, specifying the detailed procedure. Okay, so that will be covering the discussion of the data gathering procedure. Then finally, we have treatment of data. So if it is purely qualitative, it will be under the side head title data management. Okay, but if it is purely quantitative, it will be under the side head title statistical treatment of data. Okay, so if it is purely quantitative, it can be uh, in the form of descriptive statistical treatment or inferential statistical treatment. Okay? So when we say descriptive, it is meant to measure condensed data, okay, centrality, variability, or distribution, while inferential when establishing relationship between two or more variables and, okay, comparing two or more groups. Okay, so in a qualitative data analysis, okay, so you may be dealing uh, with thematic analysis. Okay, so that will be made part of the discussion under data management. So that would sum up our discussion about the contents of the third chapter of the UL prescribed report, consistent with the requirements of methodology. Therefore, your final requirement will be discussing all these important elements, okay, of the research design section of the UL prescribed report. It may not be in the form of the full-blown research report, but it would be that which will discuss everything that is required in a research methodology. So that ends our session for this uh, for the topic uh, overview on methodology.